morning. Thank you all for showing up. I'm so happy that you're from all over the world. I've met some old friends. I've made some new friends already. I think it's really terrific that we're here. I'm going to share with you as much as I can. I'd like to know a little bit about you. How many of you work in any form with higher education? That's most of you. How many of you work in any form with K-12, even through higher education? Okay, that's fewer of you. What I'm going to talk about is kind of the whole system of K-12 through higher ed, but I'm going to focus a little bit on K-12 because if we don't get the right preparation in K-12, it certainly doesn't help our higher ed. So the title that I proposed a while ago and that's in your program is The World Needs a New Curriculum. And that's a book that I published, actually self-published a couple of years ago. It's available on Amazon. But I've updated my thinking since then. And I try to always think more deeply and more into the future about what's happening. And so now I'm going to talk about what the book that was just published by Teachers College Press, which is called Education to Better Their World, Unleashing the Power of 21st Century Kids. And I hope we'll have some interesting discussions. We're going to have the opportunity afterwards to have some conversation, and I'm thrilled about that. So thank you all. You're also free to interrupt me with questions if something hits you. And if you really need to interrupt me in the middle, you can stand up and raise two hands, and I'll give you the floor. So I do this slides, let me just say, I do that in a particular kind of way. It's my own thinking about ed tech. Everything that I'm going to say is more or less going to be on the slides. So if you give this presentation to somebody else afterwards, you will be able to see exactly what I said. No need to take notes. You will get it. Just send me an email. I'll give you my address at the end. So I think about kids. Really, that's what motivates me. I have an 11-year-old son, and they need to get to the future with the skills and experiences that are going to let them thrive in a very, very different context. Our context is changing a lot. Wait till we see what Washington looks like in 4 years, right? Might be a big sign. But the context that really counts is the longer-term context. It's the third millennium. We are now in a very new world and things have changed, and we don't want to just equip our kids for the world of yesterday, the world that we grew up in, almost everybody in this room. So what we want is to help our kids and our young people be the people and become the people that they want to be, and not just the people we want them to be. And there's a lot of this that goes around. It sort of comes under the heading sometimes of Tiger Mom. That's, I guess, a lion dad. So the question then becomes, how do we best prepare kids for the future? And it has a short-term component, because we have kids who are already in the system. And it has a longer-term component, which is really where I want to push our thinking a little bit today. How do we best prepare them to thrive in a very new and different world? That's really what we're after. And to do that, we have to rethink what we mean by education in this world. And we have to do that all the way from the pre-K, or even before, all the way through grad school. And ideally, there's a continuum which doesn't exist particularly well today, but we can create one. And now I'm going to make a very provocative statement because you are the e-learn people. The more I think about it, the more I think we don't really need, and particularly I'm talking at the K-12 level, we don't really need all the specialized educational technology that's been coming out that we use for testing, that we use for content, that we use for administration, because we have all these tools. We already have these cell phones in our pocket that can do almost everything that we need to do. And that's the tools that our kids are going to have for the rest of their lives as they develop. So it's really interesting to think about whether this whole industry that we have of e-learning is really necessary, or whether we're better off thinking about taking the tools in the world that exist, whether it's Google Docs or anything else, and using them for our own purposes and teaching our young people to do that. So here's a young person. Some of you may have kids or grandkids this age. And the real question is, how much of this kid's world have changed in 20 years when the kid grows up and becomes a college student or beyond? And the answer is huge amount. This, you may be familiar with this chart. This is population, but it has to do with technology. It says that for millennia, we were very flat. There weren't very many of us. Things stayed pretty much the same. And then at the corner there, they started to take off. And that's really very recent. And now we have this exponential growth. There was actually exponential growth before then, if you believe Kurzweil, but it was very slow because it was at the beginning. So in the remainder of the 20th century, my sense is that what we call education, the actual thing that we think about as education, will be very different. And I see education, perhaps differently than some others, I see education as all the experiences that you have that take you from being a young person to an adult and beyond. So I think it will change, and I think the biggest change in how we look at it is going to be from education as getting grades, right? You get good grades in elementary school to go to high school. You get good grades in high school to get into a good college or a good job, et cetera. That's what we think of a lot of the time as education. I think it's changing to what I'm calling an apprenticeship to the world, to learning how to do things that make the world a better place. Not the world according to any particular person, but according to you, your world. Now, you all know that we live in this very rapidly evolving world, and here's what I think characterizes it. The first things are volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Some of you may have heard of this. It has an acronym already of its own. It's called VUCA. If you haven't heard about VUCA, you should, because that's what the military is talking about. And it really is, talk about ambiguity, we have to invent new words. Frenemy, competition, that define this world. It's very different. And along with the VUCA, we have this accelerating change. And the emphasis is not on the change. We all have seen change. The emphasis is on the speed of change, the acceleration. So what we ask our kids to do in today's world when they go to wherever they go to is this: academic achievement, success within the current system, knowledge of subjects, college readiness, or college work, which is what a lot of you or most of you are involved in. But the question is, what do we want to ask of the kids tomorrow? Is that enough? And my sense is that it's not. What we want is for the kids to improve their world. And that's a very different way of thinking about the ends of education. We already see plenty of kids who say that. You probably heard kids say, I want to change the world. I stop them a little bit when they say that, and I say, wait a second, I think you want to improve the world. Hitler changed the world, no question. And other people may change the world, but not in a positive sense. We want to help our kids be able to change the world in a positive way for all of us. And people are starting to think about this. So this is the International Baccalaureate website, motivated by a mission to create a better world through education. Now, because of that, people have always been motivated. You probably are sitting there and say, yeah, of course we want to have a better world through our education. Why else would we educate kids? But the difference is that we're moving to a new paradigm of how to do this. Here's what we used to do and what we still do in most places. We take kids, young people, and put them together with content. And we do it through all the ways that you guys are working on and all the old ways. And we hope that produces some learning. Here we are, e-learn, right? And we think that that learning will make improved people. Mostly intellectually, because that's most of what our learning is about. But that's what we think. And then we place this huge bet, or as they used to say, huge bet, that those people will go out and improve the world. Maybe, someday. And as we all know, some of them do and some of them don't. But it turns out in our day and age, there's a better way, a new paradigm. And that is this. We take kids, starting from the very beginning, but all through school, and we put them together with real world problems that they perceive and that they are interested in. And out of that, we get solutions. Believe it or not, and I'm going to describe several of these, kids are capable of producing solutions to problems, both small and large, that are often unexpected. Some of you may have read Ender's Game. That gives us an improved world now, while the kids are in school. Whatever community your school is in gets better. The world gets better. But that's not the most important part. The kicker, the best part, is that the result of what we do gives us empowered, world-improving people for the rest of their lives. So we build a world of world-improving people who are also good, who are also effective at doing what they're doing, but especially people who have been educated to improve the world. That's where I think we're going. It's a change from personal achievement, which is what we have been doing for many, many years, to real-world accomplishment. From individuals' grades and rankings and personal success to teams and projects that improve the world, and especially real-world results. Why is this important? Because that's what the people who are building the world, the employers, are after. They don't want people with academic success only. They want, as it says on Google's website, people who can get things done. And we have not done a good job of producing people who can get things done. We spend a lot of time focused on learning, e-learn. But I don't think learning is really the goal of education. I think it's a means to the goal, but the goal is real-world accomplishment. That's what we want our kids to do eventually, but the best way, the best predictor of future accomplishment is accomplishment now. Our kids, interestingly enough, are starting to recognize this at all levels. They want to do more. Talk to them all over the place. You will find, not everybody, but many, many who want to do it. And I think they need help, which is what we're about as educators, applying whatever they're passionate about to improving the world. We don't do a good job of applying the passion. Respect and trust from us they need. That's the number one thing they ask for. Independence, and for us to believe in them. This is the comment. Some of you may have heard of Esther Wojcicki, who's the teacher in that picture. And that young man is James Franco, who is an actor, a film actor, reasonably well known. And here's what he said. He started out as a not-so-promising student in her classes. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. And I don't think we can think of a better result of what we do as educators than that, and that as many kids as possible feel that way and succeed. Now, of course, we come from a great tradition of education. And all of you in this room, I'm sure, have worn those clothes at some point in your careers. But the interesting thing to remember, and this occurred to me only recently, is that there are really two great traditions of education in the world. One, the oldest, is the accomplishment tradition. This is how we started. This was father to son, mother to daughter, apprenticeships. We taught kids how to get things done on the farm, in the world, building, whatever it was. It's about action. It's about relationships. It's about accomplishment. And then, along the way, there were people who said, there are some interesting ideas to think about. We really ought to think about these things more carefully. They formed universities. They formed academic societies. That's the academic tradition. It's almost entirely about thinking. That's why we put such an emphasis these days on critical thinking. The interesting thing from my perspective is that these things went in different places. The accomplishment tradition went into our businesses, went into our jobs. We want people who can get things done. The academic tradition went almost entirely into our schools. So our schools became, in a sense, segregated from the world. We even use the term ivory tower, to be about thinking. Well, I think it's time, in this day and age, to put those two traditions back together. And I think that's going to be the big movement of the 21st century and the third millennium. We can't have them separate. You can't just get prepared, and then be expected to go out and do something, because you haven't been educated to go out and do something. That's what I call an apprenticeship to the world. And you can take that in any way or form you want to. But young people, kids, and I use the word kids, meaning anybody from this big to that big who we wouldn't yet call an adult, they've always learned more, and they've always been most motivated when they were doing real projects in the real world for real audiences that prepare them for the world in which they're going to live. They know they need to be prepared for that world. And since now we have a very different world, we have the Bill Gates world at your fingertips, the kids are no longer the same people, or the same kinds of people that we were when we sat in classrooms. And for better or for worse, a lot of us see education as what we went through when we went. We're just trying to do it a little better. But I think it's changed differently because the people have changed differently. What we have now in front of us, if we are in a classroom, and even you, are people with extended brains. You all have in your pockets a cell phone. You all have in your lab a laptop. Those things extend our brains unbelievably in terms of the power we have to find information, to manipulate information, to work with others, to do all these kinds of things. Not only do we have extended brains, or especially the kids have extended brains, but they're all networked together. And that's what social media is. It's this experiment in figuring out how we deal with the fact that we're all networked together. And it starts in social ways, but it's growing in every way. So I spoke at a place and they said, well, we like to deal with the whole person, the heart, the mind, the hand. I said, well, you better add one more thing, the pocket, right? Because that little device that's sitting in your pocket or whatever, it's representative of a whole bunch of things, really is a huge piece of the person now. And everything that we do in the future is going to be a human-machine interaction in some form or another. And what does this mean? It means that we have this group of empowered kids. We never had this before. Kids were always the people who weren't empowered. They were the people who knew very little and had little experience, and we had to open the world for them. Now the kids are empowered, in some cases more powerful than we are. They can do infinitely more. They can collaborate in totally new ways. And they can do it with technology or without. This is not only about the people who live in the places that have the most advanced technology. Cell phones are all over the world. And the society is moving to the idea of people collaborating and helping each other. These kids are empowered to do all these things. I won't even read them to you, because you can read them, in new and better ways. And we're not taking advantage of that, I don't think, as much as we could be. And that's really what we want to do. And I'm just going to give you some examples of what kids have recently done. Any of you know about the software called iWire? iWire is a game, you should look it up, iWire.org or com, I'm not sure, where you help map the brain. We're trying to figure out, we still don't know the connectome of the brain, of how the wires are really and cells are really connected. You can get a little centimeter and help figure this out. And you can do this when you're in elementary school. A 6-year-old in Canada, I met somebody from Canada already here today, decided that he heard that the people in Africa didn't have water like he was used to, clean water. So he said, we can do something about that, and he built an organization called Ryan's Wells, and now they've put together huge groups of people, and they've dug hundreds of thousands of wells. There's a 6th grader who started that. 9-year-olds, a water park. Community said, we want to build a water park. Well, the kids said, we should design it, because we're going to use it, and we know what a water park should be. So they lobbied, they did their designs, they went to the city council, they lobbied, and the city council accepted their designs to be built by the local architects. 11-year-olds, government environmental reports. In the US, schools have to do an environmental report. And they usually hire a consultant and pay a lot of money. And one school said, wait, we don't need to hire a consultant, we can hire our 6th graders. 6th graders are 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And they did the environmental report. Not that they learned about the environment. That's the old way. No, they did the actual environmental report for their school. 12-year-old girls, again, middle school, printing out 3D hands. Now, printing out a 3D hand is not such a big deal if you have a 3D printer, because there's a site called Enable from which you can download the instructions to 3D print all this stuff. But here's what the kids did that's different. They used their social media to go out on the web and find the kids in their neighborhood who needed hands. And then they custom built the hands for those kids. They held a thing called a handathon. So this is a combination of what the technology can do and how it can help connect. Middle school kids are growing companies. A kid goes into a restaurant. I don't know if this exists everywhere in the world, but it's certainly in the US. Often when you go into a restaurant with kids, they give the kids crayons to play with while they wait for their food. Well, this young person said, what do you do with the crayons when they're finished? And they said, well, we throw them away. Well, that's a big waste, he said. I'm going to do something about it. He started an organization called Color My World. He now has kids all over the US and I think in other places in the world putting bins in restaurants, collecting the crayons, bringing them back, sanitizing them, and distributing them to those kids in the world who don't have crayons. An 11-year-old is one of the world's top cryptographers. High school kids in San Diego. This is a great story because San Diego felt a need, and the government felt a need to test the water, especially after rainfalls, because it really got very acidic or it wasn't right. So every time it rained, they wanted to test the water. They had very expensive equipment to do this. They ran out of money. They had to fire everybody who was testing the water with that expensive equipment. Kids got wind of this in a high school. They said, we could use that equipment. So they trained the kids to use the equipment, high school kids. And they produced the same data, and they published their data. What did the government say? Oh, no, that's not official because you guys don't work for the government. They said, we don't care. We're just going to put it online. Same data, same things, same people who need it, they get it. Kids can do this kind of stuff. High school kids can build supercomputers. The instructions are on the web. You have a lot of old laptops. You can put them together into a supercomputer. You can restore historic artifacts that we don't have the money or the time or the people to restore. And this is the last one, and perhaps my absolute favorite. A group of kids in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, were harassed by the police. The police came to their family late at night. It turned out it was a total mistake, but instead of just going away, the police said, oh, while we're here, we'll put you all through the computer and see if you all have records and stuff, which was harassment. Kids said, we're going to do something about this. They created an app to rate your police. It's like Yelp, except that it rates public services. And then those things can be collated on the cloud by different environments, different needs, different cities. So kids are able to build an app to do something that they think is needed for the world. And these are the projects that people are doing in K-12. Now, there's an interesting thing is that you see some colleges, maybe some of the universities and colleges that you work with are doing more student projects. I hope so. But think about it. That's a terrible time to start. It's too late. You want to have kids who've been doing projects since kindergarten, so when they get to higher education, the projects that they're doing are really based on a huge amount of experience and can be really world improving. So all these things are possible for kids to do. Kids can build networks, they can lay cable, they can do lots and lots of things. And to serve these empowered kids, we need to change the way we think of education. What global education should actually be. Not just an academic process. Not just the fact that we take e-learning or whatever we take and do the academic stuff better. No, we want to empower these kids to use their new abilities to add value. It's a term you don't hear very much in academia, but you hear it all the time in business. Your purpose is to add value to the company and to the world. And we can add value, kids can add value to their personal communities, their local communities, and their governments and worldwide communities through real-world accomplishment. And we do some of this. We have service projects, we have long-term projects, we have capstone projects, but we don't do nearly enough. We use that old model of first learn for lots of all these years, and then later go out and improve the world. That model is what is changing. We need to do much, much more. It's a different matrix. Yes, we have the STEM and the humanities and the arts and all the things that you see down along the side. We also have some new underlying skills at the top, but the core of this whole thing is real-world projects. And my big beef about e-learning is that while we have lots of software to do the academic stuff, we have almost no software to facilitate these real-world projects. And that's something that I encourage you all to think about. That's what our kids need in the future to succeed. This is Thomas Carlyle's 19th, 18th century even. Nothing builds self-esteem and self-confidence like accomplishment. People who can get things done. So I think we're basically shortchanging our kids. No matter how much e-learning, no matter how much this we give them, we're shortchanging them because we're underestimating what they're capable of. They're capable of a lot more than learning. They're capable of accomplishing. And learning, again, is the means to accomplishment and adding value. Academic alone underestimates what the kids can now do. And it's a big error, a huge error, to think if we just incrementally improve what we have now, that we're going to do enough. All will be well. We need to vault over this education cost. Now you talk about building a wall. We have built a wall. We have built this huge wall that says all we do is academic-only education. And we do it better and better. And we do it with e-learning. But we never get past to the other side of the cusp. All we do is get better and better and better at that side of the cusp that is on your left. What we need to do is to get over that wall, over that cusp, to this education to better their world, that we have a different. So it's time for a new perspective. And I'm going to very, very quickly now share that perspective with you. And if you want more on that perspective, you can read the book. But we need an education that goes beyond the academic to this education, and it consists of better ends, better means, better curriculum, better teaching, better technology use. So really quickly in its outlines, the ends are not personal achievement. The ends, personal achievement is great if it comes through making a better world. We're going to improve your world, and in the process, you will become a better, more capable, world-improving person. So learning is not the goal. Learning is a means. The goal is to better their world and become good, effective, world-improving people. And if we told our kids that, instead of told them that they should get good grades, I think we would get different results. So the end is beyond learning to becoming. The means, instead of the courses and discussions, those are all important. It's not that we want to get rid of them totally. But the focus needs to be on real world accomplishment. And you only want these other things in the sense that they're going to lead to real world accomplishment. It's like medical training, right? You have to learn all this stuff. But the reason you learn all this stuff is so that you can accomplish the goal of making healthier people. We don't need the made-up problems. There's a lot of problem-based learning going around these days. Some of you may be involved in it. It's fine, except it doesn't go far enough. We need to go to real-world projects that solve real problems. And kids can do that at a very early age, and certainly anybody in college can do that. It's not the needs of the class. It's not the needs of the teacher. It's not the needs of the subject. It's the needs of the world that we want our kids to focus on. It's not just that we do problems in class and we try to solve them and get the best grades. We want to take the passions of all these kids, and every kid has passion, if we dig for it a little bit, and apply it to making the world a better place. That's the missing part. It's not just the passion. We hear a lot about passion and how we have to focus more on the passions of our kids, and I agree. But then we have to apply that passion and help them learn to do that. And the nice thing about that is what kids come out of school with is not a set of grades, or it could be a set of grades, but they come out with a resume of all the projects they've done, of all the things they've accomplished. Imagine if they walked into an employer's interview with that and they said, oh, you want somebody with marketing? I've done marketing on 20 projects. So our kids become, what we want is for them to become solutionaries. And this is a great word. Friend Zoe Weil, I recommend her book. I'll show it to you at the end. And solutionaries is really what we want our kids to be, I think. Now, you can take that any way you want, but I think our kids are already starting to do this. And I'm collecting and starting a database of the real-world projects that have been done in the world. We need to have the projects that have been done all over the world. We need the projects that could be done. We need the projects that governments need or businesses need or NGOs need, so that kids who have a particular interest in a problem and have a particular passion and have a particular strength can hook up with projects that will make that kid grow. Our job, this goes back to that actor we saw, is to make our kids even more powerful than they already are and able to realize their dreams. Now, the reason this was called a new curriculum is because I think the current curriculum is not really very helpful in doing this. I think we need a new curriculum that focuses on the core skills that people need in the world. Not everybody needs math and English and science and social studies to the same degree. They may need a bit of those, and it depends on who they are, how much they need. But everybody needs effective thinking and action and relationships and accomplishment skills. Everybody needs those. So we need to get beyond what I call, and this is using English as the language, the mess. That's what we do. We decided in, this all goes back to 1893, math, English, science, and social studies would be our curriculum. Well, it doesn't work the same way. It's not that we don't need to know the top level things about that our kids don't. Our kids do need to know what the world looks like, how it works, what kinds of governments we have, some scientific principles. They need to be literate and numerate to a certain extent, but they don't need the depth in which we go with everybody. So the supporting curriculum is effective thinking, action, relationships, and accomplishment. Because that's what's needed. Subjects are needed by individuals in different amounts. Generalized skills, thinking, action, relating, accomplishing, are needed by everyone because they apply to no matter what you do. And right now we teach this very narrow curriculum. We teach reading and mathematical thinking and understanding written communication and writing and research, but not much else. Some critical thinking, perhaps. Some scientific thinking, perhaps. What the kids need is a very, very broad set of skills. And here's where you can't read that set because it's too far away. So here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this extremely quickly. I would normally do it a little more slowly. I'm going to go through these one at a time, but very quickly. So you're going to get this stuff subliminally. And as you see this, think about whether any of these should be omitted, because these are the things that people have developed over thousands of years that we don't teach systematically today. So in thinking, we have problem solving and curiosity and creative thinking, design thinking, integrative thinking, systems thinking, financial thinking, inquiry, argument, judgment, transfer, aesthetics, habits and biases of the mind, growth mindset, Carol Dweck, stress control, focus, contemplation, meditation, and especially, and we do a terrible job of this, self-knowledge of your own strengths, your own passions. In the action department, we have the habits of highly effective people that we've known for 35 years and don't teach. How can you tell kids, we know what makes you highly effective, we won't tell you? Agility, adaptability, leadership, and not just leadership, but followership, because we're not always leaders. Experimentation, decision-making under uncertainty, prudent risk-taking, reality testing, feedback, patience, resilience, grit that Angela Duckworth talks about, entrepreneurship, innovation, improvisation, ingenuity, strategy, tactics, breaking barriers, project management, programming machines, video making, innovating with the new technologies coming down the pike. All of those things. You can't just pick out innovation or creativity. They need all of these things. Collaborating and communicating, not just one-on-one, which we do, but in teams, in communities, in families, at work, online, in virtual worlds with machines. Listening, networking, relationship building, empathy, courage, compassion, tolerance, ethics, politics. We heard about that recently. Conflict resolution. These are all subjects that we know huge amounts about that are very basic. Negotiation, peer-to-peer, coaching and being coached. So you can go back and get the slides and look at those, or they're in the book. And the question is, should any of them not be part of what we do? So how should a lot of you are in higher ed. How do we relate the K-12 to the higher ed? Some of you may have heard, I think the K-12 is the time you get all of those skills, the breadth of all those skills. You don't need to learn the details of math. You need to learn all of those skills. In higher ed, you can go into more depth. And this is the T-shaped person that more and more people are talking about. How many of you have heard of a T-shaped person? Okay. Well, read about it, because that's what a lot of places are pushing now and saying those are the people we need. They have breadth and they're deep in one or two areas. So we have to go beyond the subjects to the projects. And we have to go beyond the content development to coaching and empowerment. That's a different way of teaching. I don't even have time to go into that. And in terms of technology, which is what this group is focused on, we need to move from doing old things to new and powerful things. It's trivial to do searching and writing and research and calculating, things that we could always have done. We now do them in new ways. It's nice, maybe faster, but it's not the powerful ways that technology should be used. Technology needs to be used to do things we've never done before. Real-time connection, creating apps, analyses, simulations, videos, robotics. And that's why I say we don't need so much of this special technology. We need to use the technologies that we have and that are coming to us to do the kinds of tasks that we can now do in the world. And that's what we have to teach our young people to do. So here's the conclusion. Education to better the world is starting to emerge. I'm not making this up. This is coming in many places, in many schools, in many colleges. The new matrix is here. Real world accomplishment. It's not that we need to add more classes and different subjects. It's that we have to figure out how to do an education differently for each person through projects with those core skills learned as needed. We don't have to get rid of the mess completely. We have to personalize it and make it useful for applying kids' passions. More and more people are starting to realize that in our new world, we need this different education. We have different ends of education. It's not we have to mess with our means and do the same education. That's moving deck chairs on the Titanic. We're not changing anything fundamental. But now, if we think this, and if you agree with any of this, you need to go out and convince our colleagues and our parents and our communities that this is the right way to go. And this is my favorite quote. It's from St. Augustine. We have somebody here from the Jesuits. In essentials, unity. In all else, liberty. In all things, charity. I think the essentials are this idea that the ends are to improve the world. That's what we all need to agree on. Then the liberty comes in how you make that happen. There you're free. There are lots and lots of ways to do this. You can do this kind of projects or that kind of projects, or maybe you can figure out other things, and people will do different things everywhere, and that's good. And then the charity comes in the more respectful way that we're viewing kids as empowered, as not nothings that we have to teach, but people with whom we can work to accomplish things that better the world. And to find out what works best, we'd better experiment. Any of you ever heard this? You hear this a lot, but the answer is we have to. The answer is it would be irresponsible not to experiment, because our kids live in a never-before-seen context, very different from the one that many of us grew up in. That's the actual typewriter I used in college 50 years ago. And we don't know exactly how to prepare kids, so we're just doing the old stuff a little better. We have to experiment. We have to create this new education. It has to be better for the kids and better for us. It's better for the kids because it gives them applied passion and a resume. It's better for the kids because it gives them independence and self-confidence and a sense of how they fit into the future. And it's better for all of us because it gives us a better world. It liberates this huge force that currently is not helping make the world a better place. So today we're on the ground floor of a very, very new world to come. A world that's full of imagination, a world that's full of creativity, a world that's full of innovation, entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm a huge optimist. Not everybody is, but I'm a huge optimist about the future of education. Why? Because I'm an optimist about the kids. All the kids, everywhere. They need an education that more deeply combines the academic and the accomplishment traditions with effective thinking and effective action relationships and accomplishment. They need an education that integrates them much more into helping their local communities and their global communities. They need an education that empowers them further. So every time you do something, you can ask yourself the question, is this empowering my students further? If it's not, you're missing something. Empowers them with independence, self-confidence, applying their passion, sense of how they fit in the future. Parents need to work on this as well. We don't just educate kids anymore, we educate families because the world has changed. And we need to understand that this doesn't yet exist. There's nobody we can copy. We have to invent it. We have to create it. And that's the opportunity that you all have. So let's all work hard. Let's be inventors. Let's become the people who make our kids' education about real-world accomplishment. And as we do that, we'd better remind ourselves that there are the most two important words that you can say, any educator can ever say to a kid, in my opinion. You can think about what you think those words are. Here are mine. Surprise me. So if you have to take away a tweet, the ends of education for the future are not just improving individuals, but improving their world. This is my new book. I recommend Moonshots in Education by Esther Wojcicki. I recommend The World Becomes What We Teach by Zoe Weil. And thank you.